Hey everybody. I think this is the best way to get the information out to everybody in an easy kind of format. I'm hopeful, since I'm going to be posting this in the video for you to view, that I will be able to think of all the questions that maybe you would have. But I first want to start with the information that we have that had driven this decision. So here's a couple things that we had noticed in talking with classroom teachers. One of the first things are in the Brussels classroom, since they have the Brussels children and they are all now kind of napping about that same time. It is very difficult for the Brussels to be able to get all 8 of those children into that nap room, have them on cots, and have somebody sitting there and transferring back and forth. That is extremely difficult because, number one, they're on cots. Number two, they all 8 nap at that same time. So it's not like in the seedlings classroom where in our seedlings, they're able to eat and sleep on demand. So you might be carrying one child in at a time. That's one concern that we were trying to figure out solutions to. The next concern that we were also trying to figure out solutions to was the alfalfa classroom having their bathrooms be outside of their classroom. That poses all sorts of different scheduling things for us, as well as nap rooms, how nap rooms are being watched, and our beginning of the day and the end of the day, because what if a child needs to use the restroom and yes, you only have 5 or 6 kids, then you have to take them all into the bathroom. So that was one of our situations that we needed to solve. Another situation that we needed to solve regarding the alfalfa classroom is I hate the layout. I hate the layout of it being that L-shaped room, being in that glass area, in that section is just, it's just not conducive space. Now they've counted it as our square footage, but it's just really not usable the way that it currently is. So we wanted to address that problem as well. We also wanted to address in the alfalfa classroom the billions of doors that you have going into that classroom. So that's one of the things that we want to solve in our issues as well. Let's see. So we talked about the Brussels. We talked about the alfalfa classroom. One of the things with, one of my big issues is I do not like how our classrooms are so far apart. So, for example, we have the seedlings way on one end of the building, and their next classroom that they're going to be going into, or that maybe the teachers want to collaborate with children, is way on the other side of the building. So even when parents are coming in and going to the seedlings classroom, they're never even looking into that peas classroom. They're making a beeline straight directly to into the seedlings classroom. So they're not getting to know the teachers. The teachers aren't getting to know those parents. The kids aren't used to like sights and sounds of that. So those two being very far apart was difficult for me. Also, our 2s, with having our 2 to 2.5-year-olds and our 2.5 to 3-year-olds, are worlds apart too. So the collaboration's not there. Comboing in both. So comboing at the beginning of the day and the end of the day between the seedlings and peas is difficult with taking children back and forth. Same thing with comboing at the beginning of the night or the end of the night. You're not in spaces that are even near to each other. So I've been here late several nights and watching families trying to figure out where their child is, what classroom, where are they at, and that's something that I wanted to solve with this too. Let me think. What else did I want to solve? Oh, I hate in between the Clover's classroom and the Radish classroom, into the little Radish classroom where that little kitchen entry is. There's that big opening that goes right in there that we have shelves up against to kind of block it off for kids. I want a wall there. So that's one of the things that I wanted to kind of look at too, is how can we wind up making it more of a self-contained space, and also to where the children in whatever children are in that space, that where the Clovers are currently, that they're like at that little gate. That gate is a pain of going through, and it just doesn't look good and those children are not able to truly engage in classrooms, if they're able to see the classroom right next to them, and it becomes a distraction for whatever you wind up doing in each classroom. So not a fan of that either. And so that was one of the situations, but one of the things, we didn't want to put up a full wall in that section either, because I also like to be able to have the sights and sounds. I like to be able to have camaraderie, of being able to give that opportunity for the classrooms to be able to talk to each other, and also just for opening and closing and when we're doing these combos. So some of the things that what we're going to wind up doing, got to go back. One of our other big issues is the trends that we are seeing. The trends with us having to raise our tuition, and with us raising our tuition, that is going to make more and more families in our 3K programs and our 4K programs of getting them from coming in from the public is not going to be as popular as what it had been before. So what I mean by that is, obviously, as we move up from classroom to classroom, we have additional spaces that are offered up to the public. So when they go from the Clover's classroom into the Radish classroom, that's an additional 4 spots, going from the max group size of 8 to going into that max group size of 12. So we have to reach out to public enrollment in order to be able to fill those extra 4 spots. Same thing happens when they go from the Radish classroom into the Alfalfa classroom. That's another 4 spots that we need to reach out to the public to be able to get those spots. And that's just something that we've noticed is difficult when we have children that are enrolling later with us than enrolling and staying through our whole programs. So one of the things that we want to do is open an additional classroom that would be for, right now, it's probably going to start a little bit younger, like maybe around that 12 months to 18 months. We'll just kind of look at what that is. Of having that, but what it will end into is having a additional 18 to 24 month old group. So we'll have 16 spaces that when we have our move ups in the fall when kids go off to kindergarten, that is now an additional 16 spaces right before we go into our 2 to 2.5, and our 2.5 to 3. So with having the additional 8 added, that takes up for the 4 additional spaces that are created in the Radish classroom and the 4 additional spaces that then are created in the Alfalfa classroom. So adding 8 spaces of under 2 will fill that gap for us. That will also provide additional children. If both of those classrooms are full at 16 and at 12, that then allows us to be able to be bringing in that amount of children into our, we'll have 16 children that will go into our 3K classroom that is a max group size of 20 every time. So that's something that is going to be a feeder program for us into those classrooms too. Because we know once we get parents here and they know our program, they stay. It's getting people to leave somewhere that they've already made relationships with the teachers and with the programming from the time their child might be an infant, because we couldn't fit them here. And then to ask them to leave that and come join us when they're 2, when we wind up having an additional 4 spaces. So this is kind of all working together in order to be able to provide this plan. So what we're going to do is the classrooms that are going to move are going to be, now follow me on this, it is going to be the Pease classroom will move into where the Brussels classroom is. They will have the nap room that's attached with seedlings, which makes perfect sense when those are the combos at the beginning of the night and the end of the night, because it's the same nap room. That nap room will now no longer have cots in there. That nap room will have 16 cribs with plexiglass sides. So then we can reconform that to where it is the 16 cribs. So there will be 8 cribs for our seedlings and 8 cribs for our peas. The relationship building that will be able to happen with that is that it will wind up being The parents will be walking by that P's classroom, which is the next step up. Our under ones will be in very close proximity to each other. So if we do have to combo in one room at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, they're right there. The parents will be seeing that classroom, the very next classroom that the child's going to be going in, and building the relationships, as well as the children walking by and being back and forth into that seedlings classroom. So the P's will move into that classroom. The seedlings classroom has enough space for 16 children. That's what it's rated for. We've been capped at a max group size of 8 because of the fact that we had just put the P's in there of having the infants. So that is usable space that we can use, that with some configuration around in our classrooms to be able to create that extra group. So the alfalfa classroom will move into where the P's classroom is. Number one, that gives them accessibility to that sunflower's bathroom, not to be using for those big times that the sunflower's using them, right? So like at lunch, washing their hands and all of that. So the times that it's convenient and easy, the alfalfas will still go down to their bathrooms. So like if they're washing up before, I guess probably big bathroom times is really what it is, because they're also going to have additional sinks that they can use within their classroom for washing up. So they can wash up, with art, they can wash up before and after lunch and breakfast, all of the just everyday, when the kids wipe their nose, they can go up, they can wash their hands. So they will have access to sinks in there, as well as at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, or even if they have someone that's maybe potty training a little bit more, they have access to that bathroom right in their classroom for throughout the day if there's someone that needs to use that bathroom. That would be great for our beginning day and end of the day and not having to combo the kids down until it actually makes sense to just have it be with one teacher that they're comboing down. So with that being said, the changes that need to be made in that classroom is where the door is that goes into the nap room currently will be moved to where our Clover's classroom is stationed currently. And that will be on that side to be able to provide access into that nap room from the Clover's classroom. The Clover's classroom will no longer have Clovers in it. They will have the Brussels classroom. And the Brussels will be moved into that because a couple things. Not super excited about our forced having to put kids on cots when they're 12 months old. And since we move on developmental stages, they may be under 12 months. And then we have to address who we're going to put in a crib and how we're going to wind up putting in a crib. So this way, our Brussels classroom will have all children in cribs with the access to that nap room, to that classroom. And they will also have the area that is between the two classrooms will have a wall built, a solid wall, and then we will have a door, a solid door on the bottom that would have the half door on it, like we have in the hallways from the alfalfa classroom. So we'd still have a solid door that will provide some more secluded space for the alfalfas, and they won't be disturbed by the Brussels classroom. Oh, this is another thing. So the walkway, I really dislike having people walking through that classroom in the P's. So that's a traffic pattern. People are going out to break, they're walking through. Parents are dropping off, picking up, they're walking through. I don't care for that at all. So part of this whole renovation will be, we will have keypad electric strike doors like the one we have on front that will only be loaded with families that will be getting into the radish room, the current radish room, which they're staying, and it will now be the Clovers families. No, I'm sorry, not Clovers. Where the Clovers are currently will now be the Brussels in there. So those Brussels families dropping off will have a keypad. Part of the Parent Connect that we have for ProCare that are on those tablets, we also have the ability to have a QR code that they would be able to check in and check out, that they would do that on their mobile app. So those two classrooms would be required to clock in and clock out on their apps with us putting up a QR code next to their entrance door. So they would enter right into those two classrooms, and they would exit right from those two classrooms. And that will stop that traffic pattern of going through the alfalfa classroom into the radish classroom. And that will then just become a hallway for the radishes and alfalfas to be able to do their morning combinations and their evening combinations, but they will be right next to each other for that. Let's see. So the sinks that will be in that little kitchenette that kind of links the radish classroom and the now where the alfalfa classroom will be, that links those together, we will just bring the step stools from the current alfalfa classroom into that little area, keep the half doors on that, so then we can open that door up. Children can go in there and wash their hands utilizing the two sinks that are already there, as well as the sink that is over by the door going into that bathroom for washing up before lunch, washing their hands after messy play. The countertop in the current peas classroom, that will now be the alfalfa classroom, will be taken down to you'll be able to see kind of where it's divided. So I think it's a 6-foot counter right now, and that will go down to 4 feet. And that will be moved on to be slid underneath the other banks of cabinets that are in there, and the refrigerators will be moved. That will allow, and the diaper changer will be taken down. That will allow enough space for the kitchen area to have the 4 round tables that the classroom currently uses for their eating area. And will give ample space for them to be eating in there. This will also help address the problem of the length of our 2.5 to 3-year-old classroom, because the one thing they want to do is run. When they see that long hallway, they wind up running back and forth with that. So that will stop that, and the alfalfa classroom will be able to operate very similarly to the radish classroom, where it's more of a square shaped with us closing off the door, and that will be a wall corner now to that nap room that will provide ample space for the different areas that we need. There will not be the cubbies that are inside of that at all anymore. They will be moved outside of that space, because the alfalfa classroom will have their cubbies will still be right there on that side. The alfalfa classroom parents will enter through the main doors still, and will drop off where the current peas are in. Gosh, I hope you're following me. Let's see. Our 18-month-old groups. So now this I'm going to take you for a walk on, so that you can understand the changes that are going to happen in the alfalfa classroom to make this more doable for our clovers to move into that classroom, with it being divided in half with just shelves. And those who had worked for us before, there are nap mats that fold up, and we actually have shelves. So the shelves that have our construction paper on it, there's already a shelf, I believe, in the alfalfa classroom, which I'll show you when I do take a little walk for this. So there are nap mat storages in there, and in that nap mat storage, they will have the folded up nap mats, and that will divide that classroom in between our 2 18 to 24-month-old groups. We are not going to call it a different name. That is going to be our 18 to 24-month-old group. What that will allow will be that room to be able to determine, out of all of our 18 to 24-month-old groups, which ones are more advanced. So those 8 of more advanced ones will be on one side of the room, and those that maybe need a little bit more help, or that they're not quite in that same development, will be on the other side of the classroom. So it will still be an open concept classroom. The shelving, you will not be able to see, the kids will not be able to see each other from each side, which is super cool and nice. It won't be open with like a gate that they can be communicating back and forth, because they're each going to have their own door to be able to go in that. I am going to end this video here. Then I'm going to go into that classroom, and I'll post another video that shows the changes in the alfalfa room, because that's one that you really need to kind of be in order to be able to understand those changes. So I'm going to end it for here. I hope I've answered questions so far. Probably a timeline question is one of them. So we have just received a $15,000 grant from the city of La Crosse to be able to get this under the way and move these classrooms whenever we are ready. Our licensor came in. She's already approved the move of the classrooms because she did look at our space letters and saw that this is definitely the way to go. And we have the space for it, which is wonderful. And then we have the drywallers. We will not have an interruption of service at all because the drywall contractors that will be coming in, it's a 2-day project to do everything that I want them to do drywalling wise, and that will be done on a weekend. And so that will be determined on their schedule. I may be moving the classrooms prior to the drywallers coming in. Just really depends on whether or not what their schedule looks like. The grant for the additional $25,000 which is going to allow us to have professional people come in and do these processes. We will find that out October 9th, whether or not we receive that full funding. And if we receive that full funding on October 9th, then I will have the drywallers do everything in that area. If we do not, then that will be something that Jared and I and Cody and Blaine and Wes and Mason will work on in a weekend of getting drywall hung up. And then I will just have to figure out what I want to do because we just don't know how to do the joints very well. So we may put up more of a wall board or something that would go over that. I really don't want to have to do the work. So we're hoping to be able to get this grant that we can have somebody else come in and do it. But it's still going to happen whether we get the $25,000 or not. Because this $15,000 grant covers the equipment purchases and the additional purchases of more plexiglass side cribs, which is what we need. And then we're purchasing the equipment from Cashton's Cradles to Crayons for across the board to be able to get some new shelving and other things that we need to be able to support that. So I'm going to end this, and then I'll go into the FELFA room and kind of go through the changes of what that's going to look like.